Good morning, everybody. Boker Tov. Happy Bet Be'av. Mishnichnas Av Mima'atin. How? Besimcha. And when you learn about Rav Kook, it's hard not to be besimcha. Let's face it. Pashut mod. It's very difficult to just feel like, we'll just stay sad. En ma la'asot. The Tzaddik's light has an effect on us. And Rav Kook is still a secret that we're unfolding. So is Breslov, but in our Thursdays when we're learning Rav Kook, we see there's things that it's like they were prepared for us today, for you and I today. So today we have a fascinating shir because we're going to focus on one specific relationship which Rav Kook had with a very important figure in the world of Breslov. Very important figure in the world of Breslov. And that is the tzaddik Reb Shmuel Horowitz. Reb Shmuel Horowitz, we're going to learn about him extensively later in the year, about his life, meaning not through Rav Kook, but his own world, because his life is very, very, very interesting. It's very captivating. His story is really amazing. And we also have a lot of Torah from him as well, from that generation. He has, actually, I'll pull it up. Yeah, we have a lot. We have 2 Chronicles of Yemei Shmuel. I know this is probably coming out backwards for you, but there's 2 Sfarim here called Yemei Shmuel. There's also, this is basically his writings, his life, how he got to Reb Nachman, what he did with Reb Nachman. There's also a beautiful sefer here called Kuntres Zichron Halavim, a whole sefer about his life and his children's lives, as well as all of his writings, Kisvei Reb Shmuel. So we have a lot, Baruch Hashem, on this tzaddik that we're going to be learning from today. But in order to begin to get into who this person was and what his connection was to Rav Kook, we're going to jump in right away and learn about where he came from just for a few minutes. And take a look at this first picture. This is his father. The father of Rabbi Shmuel Horowitz, his name was Rabbi Yeshaya Halevi Horowitz. Rabbi Yeshaya Halevi Horowitz. Rabbi Yeshaya Halevi Horowitz was a huge Talmid Chacham. And he was a Chabad. He was Chabadnik. He was a Rav up in Tzfat. His Rebbe was the Ridvaz. His Rebbe said about him that En dugmato bizmanenu batorah ubayirah bechol hagalil. There's no one comes close to this tzaddik Rabbi Yeshaya Halevi Horowitz when it comes to Talmud Torah or Yiras Hashem in the whole area of the north. He was really, really something else. And due to the unfortunate mishigas of World War I and all of its implications that it had, in the winter of 1922, when Parnassa was so bad, Rav Yeshaya has to travel to America. And he has to go make a living and send money back to Eretz Yisrael. Painfully enough, painfully, Rabbi Yeshaya leaves his wife and then his one son back in Eretz Yisrael, sending money. Now, what happens now is something very interesting. That we could have a whole shir just on this relationship of Rabbi Yeshaya Horowitz and Rav Kook, because they also had a kesher. But I want to focus now on a testimony that was given by Rabbi Yisrael Dov Odesser. That is like this, like in Breslov, there's this, the Nachman Meuman guy, right? That's, for those that we'll learn about him also a lot. His name was Rabbi Yisrael Dov Odesser. He had a relationship with Rav Kook. He's the one that in the pictures, he looks like that, right? But anyway, this is Reb Shmuel Horowitz on the left. And here's a testimony of Reb Yisrael Dov Odesser, who knew Reb Shmuel Horowitz. And he says like this, just for us to understand, Ma Kesher, a nice little Chabadsker Bacher, who has a relationship with Rav Kook, who really ends up being one of the most starkest Breslover Chassidim that this last generation knew. How does it work? So Rabbi Yisrael Dov Odesser said like this, Ani asiti et Reb Shmuel Horowitz lebreslov. I made him into a Breslover Chassid. הוא היה שייך לחסידות מסוימת, he was part of a different Chassidus. וברוך השם, אני דיברתי איתו מרבי ישראל קרדונר ומרבנו. I spoke to him about the great tzaddik Rabbi Yisrael Karduner, that's another one of the giants in Breslov from the last generation, and I spoke to him about Rabbi Nachman. והוא נתקרב תכף, and right away he got very close. הוא השליך את כל החוכמות וכל הקושיות, הכל, he threw away all the chokhmas, all the kashias that he may have had. אני הסברתי לו מה זה ברסלב וסיפרתי לו מרבי ישראל. האבא והאימא של שמואל בכו הרבה מאוד על זה שהוא נעשה ברסלב. The father and mother of Reb Shmuel Horowitz, they started crying tremendously because he became a Breslover. האבא שלו כתב לאימא שתעשה הכל ששמואל לא יהיה ברסלב. His father in America was receiving reports that his son is becoming a Breslover chassid. And what happens is that the father was writing to the mother extensively, please make sure, whatever happens, do not let our Shmuel become a Breslover chassid. והאימא שלו כמו שנפטרה מרוב צער והיא הייתה בוכה. And it's as if his mother died crying out of pain. Oy vay, הבן שלי נהיה ברסלב, my son became a Breslover. למה דווקא חסיד ברסלב? חסידות אחרת זה לא טוב. Why did he have to become a Breslover? The other Chassidus weren't good. ושמואל היה חזק ועמד ואמר לאבא שלו, אני רק ברסלב. This young Shmuel stood staunch, firm, and told his father, I'm only Breslov. So this is, again, Rabbi Yisrael Dov Odesser speaking about the Horowitz family. האבא שלו היה קדוש. הוא היה רב גדול באמריקה, מפורסם מאוד. His father became a big rav in America, very famous. והוא היה חשוב מאוד אצל הרב קוק. His father was very חשוב, very important by Rav Kook. והוא ביקש מהרב קוק, so this is fascinating, listen to this. Rabbi Shaya Horowitz, the father of Rabbi Shmuel, asked from Rav Kook, שישתדל בכל כוחו להוציא, next page, להוציא את שמואל מברסלב. The father begged Rav Kook, take my son out of Breslov. והרב קוק ענה לו, מה אתה בוכה? לא נורא, שיהיה ברסלב. What are you worried about? Let him be a Breslover. הם היו קדושים. משפחה של הרב הקדוש השלה. His last name is Horowitz. That's also the last name of the Shla Kadosh. This is where they came from. ואבא שלו עוד פעם ביקש מהרב קוק שישתדל בכל כוחו להרחיקו מברסלב. והוא אמר לו, לא נורא, לא נורא. והרב קוק ראה שהוא בסכנה גדולה. Now Rav Kook sees the father is in a very dangerous situation. Why? הוא יכול למות מגודל הכאב ומגודל הצער. He can die from how much pain he's in because of his son becoming a Breslover. He saw it, completely overtook him. Isn't that funny? Not funny, but most parents today are begging, praying that their children are interested in Shabbos. Here he's so scared that he's becoming a Breslover chassid. It's not like he left Torah and mitzvahs. He just was getting into Reb Nachman. ואז ענה לו הרב קוק, לא נורא שיהיה ברסלב, אל תדאג כלל, don't worry. Just kept on telling him, don't worry. והוא כל כך בכה בבכייה גדולה, he couldn't stop crying. הוא ביקש מהרב קוק שיעשה עצות איך להרחיקו. So he started asking Rav Kook, can you come up with all different types of eitzes how to keep my son out of Breslov? הרב קוק אמר לו, לא נורא שיהיה ברסלב, אתה תקבל הרבה נחת. יש לו ילדים טובים. By now I guess he had children. And then the comment was, הלוואי שכל העולם יהיה ברסלב. Okay, so here we get to where it depends who you ask, who's on the story, right? Who's saying what? The comment, הלוואי שכל העולם יהיה ברסלב, לא כל כך פשוט. That Rav Kook said, הלוואי the whole world will become Breslov. So if you ask Breslovers, they say, yeah, Rav Kook had said that. If you ask Chevra coming from the Beis Midrash of Rav Kook, they probably say, are you kidding me? You think Rav Kook would say such a statement? Again, it's not for us in this shir to decide what Rav Kook, who he was, what was his derech, and this shir is to explain the relationship between the worlds of Breslov and Rav Kook. But whatever we see over here, Rav Kook plays a very big role in the life of someone who really stands in Breslov as one of the Gedolim. But his life was torturous, this Reb Shmuel Horowitz. You see, back then, for someone to come from an illustrious family and join Breslov, it really was considered a tremendously rebellious act. It was considered something that basically meant you went off the derech, literally. As we've mentioned many times, back then Breslov maybe had 40 or 50 Hasidim. The Svarim were not as available like they are today. Like when you go to every pizza shop and falafel store today, they offer you a likutei Maharan by the side of the cashier. Back then, it wasn't like this at all. At all. So for someone from a relatively rock solid home to jump into the world of Reb Nachman really was considered dangerous, but meaning it was thought of as dangerous. It wasn't dangerous. But you see, Rav Kook is always me'al hamachloket. Rav Kook is always someone that goes beyond. He doesn't see the stirot. The only stira he would probably see in people is if you were a Sonei Yisrael, if you were a self-hating Jew, that was probably the thing that Rav Kook would say, sorry, with this, there's nothing to deal with. But if it was another shita of Yiddishkeit, of derech and avodas Hashem, it takes a big person to realize harbe drachim lamakom. There are a lot of different ways to get to the Ribono Shel Olam. And Rav Kook understood this, and his sensitivity to the Breslover Hasidim, and specifically to Reb Shmuel Horowitz, is mamash pilei playim. It's so beautiful. Not just Rav Kook's sensitivity, but also his Talmidim, his real Talmidim, the big ones, they got it too. And specifically, we're speaking about Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap. Now, you know that, and you'll see a picture of Rav Charlap. We've spoken about him a lot over the years. Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap, together with the Rav Anazir, Rav David HaKohen, were the two prime pupils of Rav Kook. They were the two main students, the Talmidim of Rav Kook. And in the summer of 1925, Rav Shmuel Horowitz, who by then already has a personal relationship with Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap, he comes to his home in Shari Chesed, and he's just opening his heart, and he's telling him how difficult it is that his own, not just by what the world is saying about him, but also about how difficult it is by his own family, that his own family is making it mamish, almost impossible for him to be a Breslover Chassid. It's making his life torturous, not just his father, but other family members as well. So Rav Charlap writes his father a very important letter that we have. And I want us to look at this letter that will help us understand a little bit better the relationship over here of the sensitivity of Rav Kook's Talmidim as well. So he says over here, this is on Yud Zayin Sivan Tafresh Pehei. This is June 1925. He's writing to the Rav Agona Mefursam, Moreno Rabbi Shaya Horowitz Shlita. And he says like this to him. Ze ata ba elai bno hayakar Hashem yishmareu v'yichayil beveiti. Your son just came to my home in Shari Chesed. V'hineni sameach lifros bi Shlomo. I was so happy just to hear from him, because knowing how he's doing is always good for me. But then he says, but I'm also mishtatef in his pain that he's suffering so much from family feuds. Ki kfi, second to bottom line, ki kfi hanir'ah, kol chet'o eino ela ma shemekurav benimi nafsho lechasidus Breslov. Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap is writing to his father, to Rabbi Shaya Levi Horowitz, and he's saying to him, the whole chet, the whole geschäft that he's guilty for, so to speak, is that he got close to Reb Nachman. Does that make sense? Now, just to explain, Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap is not a Breslover Chassid, but he's a Talmid of Rav Kook. And this is the point of today's shir. I think one of the main points is that if you're a student of Rav Kook, I don't know if you're a Zionist, I don't know if you're Hasidish, I don't know if you're Litvish, I don't know if you're anything besides one midah. You're sensitive. You're a sensitive human being. And that midah is of utmost importance. You're sensitive to other people. You feel their simchas and you feel their pains. After that, all opinions and whatnot may play a role, they may not. It's not as important. A chassid, a talmid of Rav Kook, is sensitive to someone else. And Rav Shmuel Horowitz knew that he found a place of peace and of sensitivity in the home of Rabbi Yaakov Moshe Charlap. And he continues, bottom line here. This is how Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap is writing to Rabbi Shai Horowitz. U'ma yesh la'asot? What can we do? Im kol echad oved et Hashem yitbarach kefi shoresh nafsho. If every person is serving HaKadosh Baruch Hu in accordance to their root soul, isn't that what the Rebbeinu Shalom would want? Meaning he's saying, this is what, listen, your son is his root, the root of his neshama is rooted in the or, in the light of Reb Nachman Breslover. In other words, he's saying, do you want him to be disconnected from his own soul? Is that what you want? V'Hashem yisbarach yizachenu gam lanu la'avod kfi hadarush l'shoresh nafshenu v'taken et kol chelkei hanefesh ruach u'neshama shelanu. So he says, amazing. He says, like, so beautifully. He said, you know what? Hashem should also like merit us to work on ourselves as much as we need to metaken the shorish of our nefesh, to metaken the three aspects of the soul that he's speaking about here, nefesh, ruach, neshama. Meaning, he's saying alavai, and he's speaking as someone who has definitely found the root of his soul in the world of Rav Kook. He's saying alavai, we should also be privileged to be connected to nefesh, ruach, neshama, our own nefesh, ruach, neshama. Now, interesting. Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap is doing something very interesting here, because what kind of language does this sound like? This sounds very much like Lubavitch. This sounds like the language of the Alter Rebbe. That's because he knows who he's talking to. Shmuel Horowitz's father, Rabbi Shaya Horowitz, was a Chabad Chassid. Therefore, he was talking to him like this. And then you see the rest of this letter here. He's speaking about. He asks him to help with the mitzvah of Achnasas Kala. It's very, very interesting that we have all these things. We have all this correspondence. So this is Rav Charlap's sensitivity to Rav Shmuel Horowitz. Now, like I showed you before, in these own diaries, Yemei Shmuel, we have a lot on his life. He writes extensively about his meetings with Rav Kook. The problem is that we see something that's very bothering, is that for some reason, the publishers back then, from the Breslover Chassidim, they took out Rav Kook's name from these publications. Just like we learned last week about Rabbi Avram Chazan, Rabbi Avram Ber Reb Nachman's the leading Breslover figure in Uman in the earlier part of the 20th century, who has a sefer called Biur Halikutim, a very important sefer in understanding the teachings of Reb Nachman, he had a haskama from Rav Kook on this sefer. It was removed. Also here in Yemei Shmuel, so much of the correspondence that he has with Rav Kook was removed. There was a kanos, there was a spirit of zealousness within the Breslover Hasidim that we don't see that much today. But back then, like we saw last week, by the correspondence that Rav Kook had with a Breslover Chassid living in Uman with Getzel, Rav Yochim Getzel, where Rav Getzel's wondering with Rav Kook, he's saying, are you like a Fabren Zionist? Because it's not really our derech. He said over there, Hayadayim Yedei Esav, about the Shita of Zionism. But, sorry, unfortunately, in Yemei Shmuel, many of the things that were about his correspondences with Rav Kook were hushmetu, they were taken out. But we know from different feelings, miluim, and family testimonies that he's referring to Rav Kook. And he's speaking a lot about how difficult it was for him to be accepted in different yeshivas for kollel, to get stipends. He was having a hard time wherever he went. And incredibly enough, Rav Kook was always there for him, writing haskamas for him. When he thought it would be good for his name, that Rav Kook would be writing for him. He was doing all the most just incredible things. And this Reb Shmuel Horowitz, who was mamish tormented, he really knew that he could always come to Rav Kook and always find love there. I want to give you, Shimon, if you could put on, there's a picture of Rav Shmuel Horowitz around the age that we're speaking about. This is Rav Shmuel. Rav Shmuel was something else. I always find it very, very helpful to look in the eyes of a tzaddik while you're learning about them, because mamish, the eyes say it all. Rav Shmuel, this is already a younger picture. We'll see a little bit in a few minutes, a later picture of him. But Rav Shmuel Horowitz, it's the same picture, just not in color. Rav Shmuel Horowitz was pashut, very much alone in his ma'aracha, very much, feeling like it's all on him. However, he does not give up. He does not succumb to any of the pressures. And it got worse. But before it gets worse, let me share with you something really fascinating, which is very interesting about Rav Kook in this manner. So in 1925, his matzah, like we see, 1925 is when Rav Yaakov Moshe Charlap writes this letter to Rav Shmuel Horowitz's father. But he was so oppressed that the matzah was getting worse and worse. So he decides to go to Rav Kook's home to get some strength. Where was Rav Kook in 1925? Rav Kook, together with Rav Moshe Mordechai Epstein and with Avram Dovber Kahana Shapira, are on the mission to America to raise funds for the yeshiva students, like we learned. Rav Kook was very helpful in raising funds for Slabotka, obviously for his own yeshiva, and for Bichlal, the yeshiva world in Eretz Yisrael, which wasn't that great, but it needed a lot of help. So Rav Kook is out in America. We have a lot of pictures. We've shown a lot of pictures from that time that Rav Kook was in Boston, Washington, Chicago, New York, other places as well. So a few months later, when Rav Kook comes back home, Rav Shmuel Horowitz finds out about this, and he right away immediately goes to Rav Kook's house. He's like, Rav Kook, I can't, no one, enli menucha, they're not leaving me alone for 1 second. And he's certain that this would be a similar response like it was in the past, that Rav Kook would come to his aid, and he would be helpful to him, and he'd just calm him down and be like, okay, I'm going to help you. But shockingly, Rav Kook tells him the following. He says, listen, you're not going to believe it, but I just came from speaking somewhere in the old city. And a group of young Bachrim saw where I was speaking, and they threw a bucket of water at me. And it just missed me. But if that bucket of water would have hit me, I would have been injured. It would have been really, really bad. So at that point, Rav Kook realizes that him giving haskamas to people is not really beneficial. It wouldn't help, and it would probably only bring up more machlokas. He was nervous that by him helping Rav Shmuel Horowitz, it would make life even worse for Rav Shmuel, and possibly also for Rav Kook. So by now, this tzaddik is already a few years later, he doesn't know what to do. And this is where it gets really, really interesting. his own father-in-law demands that he gives a get to his daughter. He doesn't know what to do. So what do? He gets up and he goes to Uman for Rosh Hashanah of 1929. And he feels that it's right to go with a friend, so he tries to get his friend Rabbi Yisrael Dov Odesser to go with him to Rosh Hashanah for Uman in Rosh Hashanah, 1929. But I see Chaim David's learning with us. I know that Chaim David, you had a personal relationship with Rabbi Yisrael Dov Odesser, so it's very special to speak about him with you. Rabbi Yisrael Dov Odesser consults with Rav Kook whether he should go or not and travel, but he was convinced by Rav Kook not to. It was, you have to understand, it was very, very dangerous to travel back then in those days. It was very dangerous to be a Jew in those days anywhere in the world, specifically in going back to communist Russia. So he ends up going alone. And he's there for about a year and a half. Now, when he's in Uman, oh boy, does he explode in Kedusha and is his kashrus to the Breslov Chassidim there. And this is, you have to understand when he's coming into Uman. He's going there in the time of Soviet Russia, in the time of Stalin. Now, to get to Reb Nachman's kever, it was almost impossible, but he did it. Now, Talmidim of Rav Kook, in this part of the story, always say it's very important you remember that Rav Kook never considered going to Uman a mitzvah, but he said it's a matara is a tochen dati, meaning it has a religious purpose. And he writes about this in a halachic work of his, in the Shailas and Shuvas Mishpat Kohen, where he says over there that the tefillah by Kivrei Tzadikim is a to'elet, meaning it's helpful, but it's not a mitzvah. And Rav Kook says it's better to daven by Kivrei Tzadikim in Eretz Yisrael and not go to Chutz Laretz. And there's a lot to speak about this, and he was mainly basing this on, listen, if you have Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, if you have Chevron, then you don't need to go anywhere else. Now that's really where the voice that says that Rav Kook perhaps wasn't a stark Breslover comes to life, because any real Breslover knows that the Tzion of Reb Nachman, the Kever of Rabbi Nachman, is one of the holiest places in the world. Now, those of you that have not yet learned inside the Torahs of Reb Nachman about the burial spots of Chassidim, of Tzadikim, I'm begging of you to hold back your judgment until you learn it inside. Because Rabbi Nachman's whole shita, based on his great-grandfather's shita, about the actual burial spot of a tzaddik is the Bechina of Eretz Yisrael. We'll talk about that one day. We have spoken about this whenever we go on our trips, as we understand a little bit deeper the point of these trips, of these pilgrimages. But what we see over here is that even though Reb Shmuel Horowitz went to do something that maybe Rav Kook didn't think he was a mitzvah, Rav Kook comes to his aid again when Reb Shmuel Horowitz gets arrested, and while he's trying to journey back, and things get really, really bad. You know what? Let's show you first a letter that Rav Kook ends up writing the British consulate in Moscow, as Reb Shmuel gets stuck there, and he's asking him he's asking for help. Look what he says here, because Reb Shmuel Horowitz was arrested on account of being a spy, and he was sentenced to death. So Rav Kook writes like this: "Lehadrat kvod konsul Angli b'Moskva," to the glorious British consul in Moscow. "Et kabed baze levakesh mikvod ma'alato bidvar harav Shmuel Horowitz mitzvat miyelidei Eretz Yisrael." I'm asking you, please, from his righteousness, regarding Reb Shmuel Horowitz of Tzfat, one of the children from the children of Eretz Yisrael, shebishvil eze matara shel tochen religiosi nasa la'ir Uman. He traveled to the city of Uman for some religious context. And Rav Kook is saying, Vehu ish yashar v'chasid. This is a chassid, a pious and straight person. והניח פה אישה וילד. He left here a wife and a child. וזה כשלוש שנים שאינו יכול לשוב לביתו מחסרון תעודות. He's been trying to come back to his house for 3 years, but he doesn't have the proper documents. Rav Kook says, יהנה מיטוב כבודו, לרחם על הרב הנכבד והצנוע הזה ועל משפחתו. May it be from your gracious honor to have mercy on this Rav, on this humble and honorable Rav and his family. וייתן לו את האפשרות לשוב לארץ מולדתו ואל משפחתו. And he will give him the opportunity to come back to his homeland and to his family. בתקוותי שהדרת כבודו בעדינות רוחו הנעלה ימלא את בקשתי. With hopes and prayer that his righteousness, his honor, with the gentle of his elated spirit. So Rav Kook is way with words, huh? With his gentleness, elated spirit, will fulfill and grant my request. הנני חותם ברגשי כבוד נעלים, ובתודה למפרע נאמנו מאוד. I'm signing off with ready thanks in advance. You're faithful, and then he ends off saying, Rav Kook. Baruch Hashem, this did get Reb Shmuel Horowitz. He eventually, the pressure that Rav Kook put on Russia through the Brits is able to get Reb Shmuel Horowitz off of death row, and he comes back to Eretz Yisrael. So the picture you're seeing in front of you is a very important picture. This is a whole story on its own. I'm waiting for the movie to be made about this picture. And we're going to end off with this. Why? In 1948, the Yeshuva Yehudi in the Ira Atika, the Yidden that were living in the old city, were taken into Jordanian captivity. Amongst the Jews that were living in the Ira Atika back then was the contingency of, that was a very important group of Hasidei Breslov. Reb David Shechter, Reb Shmuel Shapira, and Reb Shmuel Horowitz were taken into the Jordanian captivity. Reb Shmuel had a brother. He was younger than him by 23 years. He may still be alive. His name was David Horowitz. I once read a whole article with him. And he ended up, I think, living in Muncie. How? Because the family, Reb Shmuel's mother and his brother ended up moving to, the whole family moved to America at around 1920. And that's when his father became a mashgiach in the West Coast somewhere. Then they moved to Canada. But Reb Shmuel never agreed to leave Eretz Yisrael. He added that, meaning we have a thing like, we hear about someone that leaves his family to go to Uman, and it says something about his Zionism. Hashem Yirachim. What kind of shtuyot is that? This Reb Shmuel Horowitz said, Halal and Yom Ha'atzmaut. Yes. This, we have to understand, we're speaking about a different type of caliber of Hasidim. There are Breslover Hasidim that acted like this. But Reb Shmuel Horowitz, you see a picture of him here. This is him after 9 months in Jordanian captivity, when he was returned, when they were returned back. And there's a lot of stories about what happened over there. We have a lot of documentation, a lot of pictures, which we'll be going through when we learn in Elul about this. But you see over here, him coming home with the little bit that he had after spending 9 months in Jordanian captivity. During those 9 months, Reb Shmuel reaches more and more and more tremendously powerful moments in his life of Dveikus, Avodas Hashem. But he was eternally grateful and felt mekushar to the Tzaddik Yesod Olam Moreinu Rav Kook. And like we see over here, like we saw today by Rav Kook's Talmud, Rav Yaakov Moshe Chailap, a student of Rav Kook is sensitive. A student of Rav Kook feels the pain of other students. A student of Rav Kook, regardless of hashkafas, is always there to do whatever they can to bring shalom bayis. And a student of Rav Kook is always adamant that a person should be connected to the root of their soul, that they should follow the beat of their own drum. Like Chazal always say, that a person should always learn that which libo chafetz. As much as we have to learn everything, that which you're naturally drawn to in Talmud Torah, you should learn that. You should stick to that. And this is another beautiful chapter that we have over here in the life of, in the relationship between Rav Kook and the world of Breslover Chassidim. Be'ezer Hashem will continue next week, not on Thursday because it's Tisha B'Av. We're going to have a special program, but we're going to have one more shir on Rav Kook and the Breslover Chassidim. And Be'ezer Hashem, we'll see you tonight, Parsha Shir at 8:30. Have a wonderful, meaningful, and strong and positive day, everybody.